Mushroom Cult demonstrates cloning a wild mushroom and collecting spores from this amazing wild oyster mushroom. This is the biggest, most beautiful that we've ever seen. It's a little bit tough to get out of the ground, but look at that shaking, that trembling. It is perfect. Couldn't be better. The edge just has a tiny, tiny hint of drying. The rest of it is absolutely perfect. Look, check out those white spores. Unbelievable. It has thin caps, wide caps, really beautiful. I'm excited to have this collected. Taking this back to the laboratory where we're going to take a spore print by just putting it over some sterile foil with a drying rack so that it doesn't touch the foil, keeping the spores a little bit clean. It doesn't leave a very good spore print because it was so high up and it just dispersed the spores into more of a cloud than an actual gill print. But we're going to use this to inoculate petri dishes. I'm going to fold it up in a little packet to keep it protected until I'm ready to use it. But I'm just going to throw some of this on agar. There's some of the spores that you can see. It's a pretty thick deposit. Really a good spore producer. So here I'm putting on a clean blade. Normally I'd use an inoculation loop, but I'll use a sterile blade here. I'm just going to wipe it across the surface. And it'll work totally fine. If I was going to use a loop, I would spread that out to try to get individual colonies, but I'm not that concerned about that. So I'm just going to collect spores on the blade, really gentle, make sure that I don't scrape through the foil, and smear it on the surface. You see that the blade is sideways, so I'm not really cutting into the agar, although there wouldn't be nothing wrong with that. I'll make 3 different plates here, just collecting some of the spores. And each one of these scrapes probably has thousands or more of spores on it, so I'm taking way more than I need. I'm doing this all in a still air box. And that's my demonstration of spores. And a few days later, they have germinated. 7 days later, you can kind of see it off to the right there. Just a white smudge, kind of a furry little smudge. And that's the spore germination. They all came out really clean. Next, I'll take those over to grain, which will be another video. But here, I'm changing the blade so that I can do a clone from the tissue. Just carefully putting the blade on to make sure that it doesn't get contaminated. Again, this is in a still air box. There's kind of a protective layer there to prevent contamination from blowing in. And I'll do a few clone samples on this as well. I just put the cap in a plastic bag in the refrigerator until I was ready to use it. And here we have just one little frond. Beautiful. I'll just start ripping it at the stem because that would be the easiest. And I'm being really careful not to expose the inner tissue to any of the dirty parts of the mushroom. And I'm careful that my hands are dirty, so I'm trying to be really careful not to get my hands close to the sterile blade. I'm just going to cut a little sample. And this is going to be a clone, whereas the spore print was a genetic recombination. This is going to be a perfect clone, so I should be getting the exact same genetics. I'll do that a few times. One thing I do differently is just where I place the mushroom. I'm putting my hands over it when I set it down. I would rearrange it a little bit. I was trying to get it in the video. See there, my hand went over the mushroom. That is less than ideal, but this all worked fine. You'll see that they were clean after the work was done. And here's the third one. Just being careful not to touch the blade to the edges or the gill surfaces. Trying to take clean tissue from the inside. And this was perfect because it rained a day or two before I found this. And so the mushroom was not soggy, but it was also not too old. So it was really fresh tissue. And a fourth little sliver. If I were to contaminate the blade, I would have to either flame it or change blades in between plates. But I'm just trusting that I did a decent job there. So we'll just call that good. And those can be eaten, those leftover pieces. Or they can be saved in case the plates didn't turn out good. You could save them and try again. So now we have demonstrated spore inoculation and cloning. You can see here that the mycelium is growing out from that tissue segment, and they all look clean. So again, my next step is to go on to grain. And thanks for watching the mushroom cult cloning and spore demonstration video. You can find us on mushroomcult.net. TikTok is where we're most active, Facebook, Instagram, and of course YouTube.